name's Romy, Cassie Baby's sitting in the sun, and today I'm reviewing a few books, but right now I'm reviewing The Little Prince pop-up edition. So The Little Prince is the first book in my 2012 where I am reading a bunch of books that I adore and have been sitting unloved on my shelf for far too long, and the first one I read was The Little Prince. I think I first read this in 2011, and since it has become a book that I actually collect editions of. So I have a couple editions, but this is by far my favourite, and I had never read it, and now I have. It is, first of all, a glorious edition. It's like, it's kind of like stepping into a favourite book from your childhood, because it's got like pull tabs that make things move, it's got spinny things, you open the pages and things pop up, and it's just beautiful and so well done, and it just adds to this story so much. The Little Prince was one of my top 10 favourite books, I believe, for a long time, and it is a really important book to me, but I didn't absolutely adore it when I read it this time, and I think there might be a few reasons for that. Let's discuss. So I was thinking about it this morning because I kind of didn't really want to do a review of The Little Prince because I was a little sad that I didn't adore it. But as I was thinking about it and kind of wondering why it had this profound effect on me when I read it like 10 years ago, and why it did not have that profound effect on me when I read it last week, I think maybe, for me at least, The Little Prince is a book that comes to you when you need it. I think there are heaps of books like that in the world. Books that carry you through an era, or find you when they can give you the most they have, that have aspects in their story that just lift you up and feel like you're being found. And I think The Little Prince was definitely that for me. It was a book that reminded me of how much I adored fairy tales, of the fact that you can have magic when you are an adult, and the fact that maybe you don't ever have to call yourself an adult. Maybe you can be an adult and it doesn't have to mean all the connotations that you think maybe it does. Maybe an adult is just like a child and magic is everywhere. And The Little Prince really reminded me of that, and it also was chock-a-block full of the most amazing quotes, and it was a beautiful book. A beautiful storyline, and I think when I read it this time, I already knew that. I wasn't reading it for the first time, so it wasn't like, oh my gosh, this story, like I've never heard anything like this, because I remembered it, and I think I probably had added on emotional significance. I had added on to the story, taken it to new places, so the fact that it was still the original story and not like the developed story in my mind, that probably weighed in a bit to how I felt about it. I mean, it's a pretty unusual story. It's both magnificent and quite odd. And it was probably a little bit odder than I remembered. I don't remember it being quite so bizarre. I had also recently watched The Little Prince film from, I don't know when it's from, I think it's from the 70s, which is a musical. I watched this many, many years ago, and last year I bought it and I watched it again, and it was bizarre and simultaneously wonderful. And I think having watched that so close to having read the book, and having watched it before reading the book rather than watching it after, or reading the book a few months after, or even a year after, it really affected how I read it, because I was seeing the characters in the film. I wasn't creating the characters in my mind. I was seeing Jim Waldo as the fox. I was seeing the Little Prince as the actor who played the Little Prince. I was seeing the pilot as the actor who played the pilot. I was wondering where these musical scenes were coming from. And there are a few elements in the film that are really quite bizarre. When we're finding out the story of the Little Prince traversing across all these planets, the filming in that was quite jarring at times. So when I came to reading about the Little Prince traversing across all these planets, it felt quite jarring as well, and I think that was made jarring because of my having watched the film so recently and having that in my mind. So the things that stuck out to me upon reading it this time were just the bits that were a little odd, the sentences that seemed a little bizarre, or the jar. The moments where it was just jarring and wasn't how I remembered it. And because this has been such an important book to me, and because I have this memory of utterly adoring it, that made it a disappointing read. And because I didn't want it to be a disappointing read, it kind of just snowballed, I think is the word. So it wasn't the most amazing read. Having it in the pop-up edition was definitely a bonus. This is such a glorious edition, and I will read this many more times. The fact that I didn't have the best experience is probably also quite natural. You're not going to love every book the same way. That is something I found out last year with all of my readings of books that I have previously loved, that I found new elements of, and I found that some of them I didn't even like anymore. And I think that is just something that is sometimes hard to come to terms with, especially when it's a book that has meant so much to you and that you love so much. And I feel certain that when I read this again, it's going to have different meanings to me. And sure, it is a little bit of an odd book, but it's also a beautiful book. It's also an incredible book. It's also in a pop-up edition, and that's what I'm going to carry from this. Every time you read a book, you don't read it the same way. It doesn't mean the same things to you. It can mean new things, it can mean different things, and it doesn't mean the next time you read it, it's going to mean the same things either. So that is all from me. All from Casty Baby, who you may be heard sighing in the background, and all from The Little Prince. For now.